everyone, welcome to Grandma's Sewing Room. I'm Annette of Annette's Needles, and on some of my past videos, so many have commented on the quilt on my wall. So this is the video I'm doing to explain that quilt. The quilt itself is called the Bella Verona Block of the Month quilt. About, I want to say 10 years ago, it might be 12, when we lived in Lake Havasu City, there's a cute little quilt shop there, or there was anyway. I'm not sure how she is now. And she ran this block of the month, and I'd never done one before, and I thought I could make a block every month. So I bought it, and the first month was the biggest one you see behind me. And the second month were the ones two across the top, and then the next one was one, and then the next one was one. And I did the first one and the second one. And then life got in the way and I kept sticking it in my basket. So it got packed away. We're moved in here, set up my sewing room, and I rejoined. I've done this every year, and last year I only finished one, but this is the American Patchwork Quilting UFO Challenge. I'm in the Facebook group, and you're supposed to list 12 of your UFOs, which is your unfinished objects, your unfinished quilts that have been started. So I had 12. And then as they randomly pick a number at the first of the month. So this time, January was number 12, number 7 was February, and this month, March, is number 3. So my number 12 was the block of the month from Havasu, is how I had it written. It's a beautiful quilt. It's the Bella Verona quilt, and I'll insert the picture so you can see it. I love it, but what I had in my mind, a block of the month, you make one block every month. At the end of the year, you have 12 blocks, you sash them, border them, and you've got a quilt. Well, apparently that's not always true. There's a lot you do each month, especially on this design, because as you saw, it's not just blocks. So when it came to month 7, and I was on a roll, I was going to finish this in January. When it came to month 7 bag, because I have them all in neat little bags lined up, it said, after you do all your cutting, make a total of 128 half square triangle units made up of different fabrics. So it wasn't just all the same, so you could just get on a roll and do the whole thing. You had to do different sets. There were 48 of one, 40 of one, 16 of one, 8 of one, and 16 of one. So when I'm done here talking about this, I am going to show you how I make half square triangles. But the half square triangles are so beautiful, and you can see how they are in this one that's a border. How about if I hold it like this? This is a half square triangle. It's 2 triangles put together that make a square. So half the square is a triangle. So this is all half square triangles, but look at the effect it gives. It's beautiful. It looks almost jewel-like making these. It's called diamond tiles. And you can see I've made 4 of. This is the 4th one. And then the next page that I turned over of the same month, so the same number 7, I thought, I'm done with all of those. Said make 48 half square units, half square triangle units, 8 of each of these fabric combinations. And that was so I could make these center one, the center, with the center block that these diamond tiles go on. It's just very effective and very beautiful fabrics. So that is how I started this Bella Verona quilt. So now I want to tell you how I make half square triangles. Years ago, when I learned to quilt, I'm looking at the year this was, I have it written. September 1992 is when I got this book, Quilts, Quilts, Quilts. The Complete Guide to Quilt Making, Diana McClune and Lauren Elms. They have done several books, and I think I probably bought them all. But I love in the back, there's a lesson plan, and I think it's the 2nd or 3rd lesson. Oh, I have a marker in it. Making half square triangles. And you can see the rectangle down there, and that's what I'm going to do, is make a grid. And that's what I did, and cut it up. Now there are different grids you can make for half square triangles. So I just drew a few measurements out. Oh, sorry. My half square triangles needed to be 2.5 inches. I will post this better. And I'm going to try and do it where you can download it, but I'm not sure I know how to do that yet. So you can take a screenshot if you want. If you want to make 24 half square triangles, then you need 9.5 by 12.5. If you want 20 half square triangles, it's 6.5 by 15.5. You need to cut your fabric. And if you just need 8 or a variety of half square triangles with 2 different fabrics of each, you can make it 6.5 by 6.5 inch square. So I will show you now how I make half square triangles, and hopefully I can edit this all together nicely. So I'm getting ready to cut my fabric. I cut my fabric at 6.5 by 15.5. I used the top grid to make 20 half square triangles. I'm using 2 different fabrics. One is a nice plain beige, and the other says Downton Abbey all over it, and I'll show you that when we get done with this. Now I'm marking my grid, and I'm using a permanent marker, a red permanent marker, to make my lines. You don't have to worry about that because that's all going to be cut off, and I use permanent just in case a little bit of it isn't cut off. That way it can be washed out. So just follow the grid lines. I'm making a 3-inch square grid so that I can have 2.5-inch square triangles. I mean squares, half square triangles. So I'm marking a 1/4 inch on each side of the fabric so that it can be a perfect 3-inch square in the middle that I'm going to sew in. Now in the book that I showed you, they said if you just add 3/8 of an inch to the measurement you want, so 2.5 square triangle would be 2 7/8 inch squares, but I would much rather give myself a little leeway in case my stitching isn't exactly right. So now I'm doing the blue lines, which is stitching lines, but that you don't stitch on that line. You're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that line on each side of the blue line that I'm making. I do them in 2 different colors. I don't think I would get mixed up, and you probably wouldn't either. But I was taught from that original book to do it in 2 different colors, so that's what I do. And I think originally did red and black, but I like this blue, so red and blue. I'm sorry you can't see the end of it because I'm going to touch where you're going to start your stitching, which is in that lower left-hand corner, which you see on the paper grid. So now I'm going to do the second piece of fabric that is plain. I did press it. I don't know why it looks so wrinkled. So I finished that grid. Now I'm going to put them both right sides together onto the brown fabric, the dark fabric. So I have a half square triangle of this brown fabric. So I'm just going to lay this grid over it and pin it. I didn't have to cut that one because I will cut it when I cut the gridded fabric off. So I pin where I'm not going to sew. And I might put in a couple of extra pins, but you just don't put it close to where your foot will have to go when you're sewing. Remember, now I'm going to start at the corner, sew around on each side of the blue line. And if you follow the line, it just goes smooth. You never have to take your needle out. Just make sure you have a needle down position so that as you turn, you can do that. I'm pointing where you start, which is in that corner. So these are some pictures of, you can see I'm a 1/4 inch away from the line. Now I'm getting to the end of my first round, and then I turn and turn to go on the other side of the line. You see my scissors is pointing at the turn. So now I'm going to do the whole
grid on the other side of the line. I did it and I ended up right there. So this is the finished product, all sewn. And sometimes you just, like at the bottom, when you get to the end, you just go straight across. The red line is where you're going to cut, so it doesn't matter how you connect your sewing. I have that much fabric left over on my half square triangle, so I'm hoping to make a project bag with this, a project bag to keep my cross stitch project in. So there's a lot of the brown left over that I can do. So now I'm just going to cut it apart, cut on all the red lines first, and so that's what I'm going to do now. You can use scissors if you don't have the rotary cutter and mat set. You don't have to use a rotary cutter. You can just use scissors, and that works out really good too. Just stay on the line. So I'm taking my pins out, because if you use your rotary cutter, you really should have your pins out, because then it doesn't mess it up. So I'm just cutting apart and all the red lines. And you can just, a lot of people like to do that. My girlfriend said she likes to do it with scissors and just sit in front of the TV, make a whole bunch of them and sit in front of the TV and just cut them. And so you're going to cut on every single line that you drew. I do the red lines first and then the blue lines, but you can do it however you want, as long as you cut just on the lines and don't cut through your stitching. It's so satisfying to see when you open it up, to see what it looks like. And this is, ta-da! Okay, so now you want to cut them all up, and we're going to use this to square them. It's called a slotted trimmer. Now you don't have to have this, it's a little bit fancy, but I love using this because you just line up your ruler where it says. You can see this seam, I'm showing again. So you see the thread on the light side, and so I'm going to line up my slotted ruler. I'm sorry about the glare there, but at the 2.5 inch line, the grayed part is your seam allowance, and then the dotted part is where your stitching line will be. I cut it where my stitching line is just a hair above the drawn stitching line. And you can see all the red will come off. I have a rotating mat, which makes it really easy, but you don't really have to have that if you feel confident or stand at the corner of your table or something. But it really makes it helpful. So now it's a perfect 2.5 inch square, half square triangle for your project. That's it pressed. So now I have 39 to go because I made 40 of them. And this is the final cut of the final ones, and I have my mountain of them. And it's so fast if you do use a rotary cutter to cut them apart and to square them all up. I used to press them all open and then square them with my square, and you can do that too. I just kind of like doing it the other way. I feel like it's a little faster. You can cut off the bunny tails if you want, but I choose just to square it with the ruler. So now these are my piles that are all ready to go to be trimmed, and then they're sitting here on the ironing board. Now what I want to do here is press to the dark side.
Okay, that was fun. That took me about 2 hours. And that was with pausing and setting up the iPad so it could take the pictures. So that's about how long it took me to make 40 half square triangles. And here is the pile of them, and we'll play with them in a minute. But I wanted to show you, I used 2 fat quarters. This is how much is left of this really cute Downton Abbey fabric. And this is how, oh, and I have a little strip here. And this is how much is left of the brown, because I did both of the plain This is my plain fabric that has no writing on it. So the half square triangles, some say Downton Abbey right side up and some say it upside down. And then the plain, a couple of the plain ones. So it's enough for us to play with. And I have kind of a funky board that I've had for a long time. I took part of a flannel back tablecloth and taped it to a foam core board. And I've made my markings of block sizes I want to do. But you can see, I'm going to turn my back to you and just put a few of these on here. So you can see how you can make a pinwheel. Nope. There. So putting 4 together makes a nice pinwheel. And there's so many things you can do. You can put them together to have the look of a flying geese. Should you want that look? Or a square and a square, but using different fabrics. There are so many things you can do with your half square triangles. And the way they had me do it on the Bella Verona, I can't even remember now, is put them next to each other. Like this. So it was like a square and a square, but then being surrounded. I'm not sure how I'm going to use them for my project bag. I just came up with that idea because I wanted to make them for you. But there's all kinds of ideas that you can do with half square triangles. So I hope you have fun playing with them and that you look into this UFO quilting challenge. It's not too late to start. I take my time. That was the January one. I have February hanging on a doorknob outside the door because that project is the next one. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about getting it done during January. I sew every Thursday with my friends and on Zoom, and I work on that then. So have fun. I will put a link to the Quilting UFO Challenge. I'll put a link to some of the tools that I used. I can't link the fabric because I do believe it's out of print because I've had it for a really long time in my stash. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. Or if you like the video, click the little thumbs up and click subscribe. Well, thank you for visiting my sewing room. It's really fun to have you here. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.